fellow slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but so much worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking satanists is Vinny's jokes. And welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and hermaphrodites, to another very special episode of the Vinny Eastwood Show. As those of you who've been listening to the show for a long time can know that this show can be somewhat episodic. Now, my very special guest that's joining me today is from the Fluoride Action Network, or Fluoride Free New Zealand, rather. In New Zealand, of course, is Kane Titchener, coming at us from Awamutu, which is right next to Coffee Awamutu. Kane, welcome to the show. Oh, fuck. I actually don't have my microphone set for the Skype for this one, so he hasn't been able to hear anything I'm saying. Hey, Kane, welcome to the broadcast.
Hey, Vinny, thanks for having me, mate.
Cheers, bro. We got there eventually, didn't we? There was a bit of news recently that a council in New Zealand has upheld people's desire to remove toxic chemical waste from their water supply, which is strangely enough an odd thing to happen in New Zealand. You know, we love toxic chemical waste that we import that's not pharmaceutical grade being added to the water supply and dumbing people down and giving them bone cancer and various other kinds of cancers and sterilizing them, etc. But New Zealanders just love it, generally speaking, because we're a very low IQ nation full of frickin' idiots. Okay, if you are a New Zealander and you're listening to this show, you're not one of those idiots. Pat yourself on the back. You resisted the tide with a broom and you held it back. Good on ya. Good on ya. And Kane is one of those people as well. So Kane, give us a little bit of background on this story here.
Yeah, so this is Whangarei District Council, and then they haven't voted to remove it. What they've done is voted to not put it in the water as per the directive from the Director General of Health. So there's quite a big backstory with this, but basically the short version is as the Director General of Health, Bloomfield, was leaving the country, his final gift to the nation, as if he hadn't done enough, was to force fluoridation on 14 extra councils through the country. Whangarei District Council was one of those, and they have they're in a position now where the council, led by Councillor Gavin Benny, is pushing back against this directive, and he got the support of the majority of his councillors, so 7 votes to 6, to not add the known neurotoxin to the shared public water supply. So that's fantastic news. Now the Empire is now striking back, and the Director General has come down heavy-handed, showing some sort of force in terms of legal action, and the CEO has brought the message from the Director General that the Whangarei District Council needs to actually toe the line here. So it's going to be interesting this week. There is another notice of motion from Councillor Gavin Benny coming up, and so with hold fingers crossed we can still hold off fluoridation from starting in Whangarei.
What made them change their mind just in general? I mean, I assume as it has been with what was it, in Hamilton, they removed the fluoride, and then the government spent, what was it, $50,000 or a significant amount of money anyway, on leaflet drops, fancy digitally created little videos and things like that were in all the hospitals and stuff, and it was just like they had to brainwash the public again. They're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe we have to keep doing this, in order to get the fluoride back in the water. And I think this has happened more than once, maybe in the New Plymouth District Council as well, if I recall.
So New Plymouth is, so you're right. Hamilton voted 7-1, I believe, in a tribunal where both sides can be heard. Funny that both, when the evidence is actually presented, they're actually keen to stop fluoridation. So 7 votes to 1. Hamilton City Council voted to stop fluoridation. That lasted a year. Then there was a referendum there pushed by the local MP at the time, trying to make a name for himself. Didn't know anything about it, obviously. And then, unfortunately, like you say, there was, I think it was 50 grand. I think you're about right. And it was just on every email that went out from the District Health Board, all the correspondence, everything from the DHBs, were just pushing this propaganda, right? So yeah, it has also happened. So then, unfortunately, referendum, Hamilton voted to put it back in because they weren't given, the full story. And similar scenario happened in New Plymouth, where they actually stopped fluoridation via a tribunal. That was in, so I think it was 2011, I believe that was. And then just recently, I drove down there with a group of concerned ratepayers and citizens down there, tried to speak to council for, a couple of minutes. We got about half an hour all up, and they voted to put the neurotoxin into New Plymouth's water supply. So, yeah, you're right. There has been, 2 cases now where they voted it out and then they're putting it back in.
So the question is, what tactical changes might be made by the movement in order to counter this? Because if you know exactly where your enemy is going to go and exactly what they're going to do, it behooves you to develop some form of countermeasure against it. Is it just a matter of funding? Like, if we had $50,000 of propaganda based on truth to brainwash the public with, into seeing the facts and evidence, is that the only impediment in our way? Because we wouldn't have got it out of the council in the first place if we weren't capable of actually convincing people in other terms. So yeah, it's a tactical nightmare when you don't have the resources against an incredibly organized enemy.
Yeah, you've asked the right question, and we know that when people, common sense people, even those who have sort of been brainwashed, they can see reason and can see that putting in fluoride into the water is not a good idea. Once they learn about where it comes from and all that sort of thing, right? Which we know, right? So it is just a matter of continuing to educate and continuing to keep pushing. And it's, we've kind of reached the point where we've got so much science, and I can go into that in a bit, but we've got so much science and evidence now. It is overwhelming. It's not, we're not grasping at straws or all of this sort of thing. We've got so much evidence, it's clear. So you're right, it's just getting the final, group of people, and it's really the commentariat, so the people who are speaking in the public and all that sort of thing, to actually see this evidence as well, and just not go along with the government line. That's what we need to do. But what we are doing, Vinny, is we've got a huge pushback going on throughout the country in multiple different council areas. We've got people who are understanding a lot more. So I remember when you came down to Hamilton to support that, the referendum, etc. Many years ago now, there was a pretty small group, right? Well, that has expanded significantly, based on, the evidence that's come out, and also how Fluoride Free New Zealand's presented themselves to be sort of, just present the evidence in a common sense fashion, So it is just a matter of time. We know that, and it is just a matter of, getting through to people and getting that information out.
Is there a possibility that the fact that people are drinking the tap water is what's helping them to not understand the evidence, kind of thing, with the lowering of IQs and whatnot? So when we talk about these tactics in these organizations, one thing stuck out to me in Rosa Corey's book, Behind the Green Mask. Do I have it in the bookshelf behind me? I think I do. Called the Anti-Delphi Technique. Now, what happens in a council is they use what's known as the Delphi Technique. And it's very much elucidated on in the Simpsons movie, where a character comes in to see the president, and he says, "I have 6 unthinkable options for you to pick from." And that's kind of what the council does. They give you 3 options that you really don't want, but because you've got options, you think that you've got a say in it, and that's called the Delphi Technique. And anybody who stands up and says, "No, I don't like that. I don't like any of the 3 options," they go, "Oh yeah, okay, that's very nice. Just sit down, and eventually we might listen to you." And they never listen to you. And so Rosa Corey encountered the same tactic being used at Agenda 21 meetings in the United States, as she pioneered what she called the anti-Delphi technique. So when you go to council, guys, what you do is you go in a big group, don't you? And you sit together, don't you? No, that's not what you should be doing. Don't arrive together and don't sit together. Sit as far apart as possible. When one of you stands up to ask a question from one corner of the room and says, "I don't like fluoride because of XYZ reason," and then you get, shouted down or whatever, then the other person on the opposite end of the hall stands up and says, "You haven't answered that gentleman's question. I want to hear it." And then when that person gets shouted down by the council, another person on the opposite end of the hall stands up and they say, no, you're derailing this and stuff like that. And what it does is it destroys the perception that the council's in control of the meeting anymore. And it works very, very well. It's been used to great effect. That's how they got Agenda 21 out of several councils in the United States. So this tactic, I believe, should be far more well utilized worldwide in virtually any issue that you go through local meetings or political meetings and things of that nature to derail their plans. Have you ever seen those villains in a movie? Go, "Why are they doing this? How they're just messing everything up?" That kind of thing. How they get all frustrated and flustered and kill their underlings off. It's just kind of like blame everybody else but themselves. It's kind of like if you make somebody go crazy who's very evil, they'll do crazy things, and then people will see them for the crazed maniac that they truly are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the thing is about it, Vinny, is that there is, if people didn't know, all your listeners will know this, but the reality is they are running an agenda, right? And the councillors and staff may be working in concert, or the staff are trying to push a certain agenda, or the councillors are trying to push a certain agenda, and they've just got multiple different strategies how to shut you down and to manipulate and move the conversation to they want it to go. So there's 2 parts to that. One is understanding that it happens, and you've sort of hit on what you can do, and secondly, it's actually us reaching out and getting into these positions of power. So we are the ones there who can actually make the difference and be putting in place the strategy and the strategy for good, So I've decided to run for the local community board, and people would say, "Oh, it's just the community board, it's not a big deal." But the amount of exposure that I've been able to bring issues is quite remarkable. So if we had many people running, and for some people it's not their thing, and that's fine. So you need to support these people, right? But if we get people running into these positions, then we can actually start raising more awareness. So this is another thing. We've got an election coming up next year. Lots of people don't like reaching out for power, but it's one of those things, G. Edward Griffin's strategy of, reaching out for reaching for the power, the power centers, and taking control. We need to at some point actually grab these levers and start making these decisions.
Yes, I remember interviewing G. I mean, I call him G because he's just straight gangster, and we, many years ago about this, and became a member of Freedom Force International, and the idea is behind the saying, the moniker of the organization Freedom Force International is, those without power cannot defend freedom. It really is quite simple. I had a friend call me up one time, and he's like, Vinny, do you think I should run for council, bro? And I was like, well, that depends. Are you going to promise a whole bunch of things that you don't deliver on and betray all the people who voted for you? And he's like, no. And I go, well, run! I'm like, Jesus, run! Because there's no other alternative, right? As soon as actually an alternative exists, people tend to go for it. However, again, as I mentioned before about countermeasures and so forth, when Billy TK had the New Zealand Public Party, huge amount of support, never seen support like that for a Freedom Party before in New Zealand history, and subsequently it got imploded and destroyed, and all the things that it built got stolen by people who were never part of the freedom movement and things like that, who now started their own freedom organizations and stuff of that nature, and cut Billy TK out. And then Liz Gunn's, New Zealand Loyal Party gets to a fairly similar level of voter turnout to the New Zealand Public Party, but nowhere near the amount of support as Billy TK was able to generate. And then Liz Gunn shut down that party. And I believe it was Calvin Alp from Counterspin who helped in significant amounts with the setting up of that party. And they went out telling people that, I know we've helped to set it up and everything, but we never wanted to control it. We never wanted to be in charge because it might. I'm a bit of an extreme person, Calvin would say, and it kind of tends to drive people away. And now, who's the head of New Zealand Loyal? Calvin Alp. So regardless of. It seems that people try their best to get some kind of freedom going in New Zealand, but the countermeasures that the system deploys in order to eviscerate the legitimacy and the success of such movements is so palpable and so capable of derailing even the most well-organized and most well-recognized and respected movements. And I think it's because sometimes we don't realize what we're up against. That's the problem with people who have a conscience, I say, is that they can't even imagine what somebody without a conscience thinks or would do, and thus are completely defenseless when they deploy these tactics to a degree.
So I'll give you an example of this having no conscience, right? So we've got the situation, just to bring people up to speed with the fluoridation issue, where the Director General of Health is Bloomfield. He directed the 14 councils. The New Health New Zealand took a legal action against those directives, right, around a whole raft of things, the Bill of Rights and the health and safety of the whole thing, and etc., the harm that it's causing, So that legal action is in process right now, yeah. And part of the steps was that the Director General of Health, the current Director General, which is Diana Safati, she had to complete a Bill of Rights assessment, and as a part of that, she said, it's completely beneficial and doesn't cause any harm. So there's, it's overwhelming that it doesn't breach your Bill of Rights. And a part of that, she was providing an update to the science. And what she's done is the two previous versions with the 2014 Gluckman-Skegg review, which was the Office of Prime Minister Chief Science Advisor.
It was such a fraud, that one.
And the Royal Society, right? So there's holes all through that one. And then that was updated in 2021. Now, so I don't want to go into all the details on that. You can see documentaries and information about that, and how they said that a 7 IQ point reduction was not significant. Okay. So a 7 IQ point reduction, which is absolutely massive, was not a significant drop in IQ. Okay, so that's basically the key takeaway from that report. That was the error that they made. So basically, the current Director General of Health has provided this update of the science, and this one of the key things it says right in the sort of first part of it, it says that there is no causal link between fluoride and lowering IQ, right? Now, the thing is about that is the studies can only be done on association, because it is unethical to test a group of children or humans with fluoride to see whether it lowers IQ, you see? So they've shifted the goalposts like over here so that you can never actually win it. So there's just going back to what we've now got. So the National Toxicology Program is a collaboration between the FDA, the CDC, and the NIEHS, right? And it comes under the Department for Health and Human Services. And they've done this 8-year review of the human IQ research on the fluoride science, right? And basically, they've done a whole lot of meta-analysis, and they've identified 70-odd IQ studies that they can use. Now, one of the meta-analysis they used was they found 52 of 55 human IQ studies found a lowering of IQ, the average of which was a 7 IQ point reduction. Okay? Now, there are 18 of 19 high-quality studies, right, that they've identified. So that's a 95% hit rate, yeah, that show a lowering of IQ. Now, the highest quality, this is the NTP saying, the highest quality studies were the Canadian and Mexican cohort data, which were funded by the National Institutes for Health and completed at the equivalent of 0.7 parts per million, okay? And they found a 5 IQ point reduction at 1 part per million. So this is the top neuroscience organization in the world, or one of, saying that this is the highest quality research that we've got, right? And it's showing a 5 IQ point reduction. So, for Diana Safati to say a week ago or 10 days ago now that there's nothing to see here, it's absolutely safe, is just so far from the truth and unconscionable, bringing it back to your point, that, the average person with a conscience just wouldn't do it. But these people they are so far beyond the realm, and it's difficult for people not to understand, Vinny. This is the trouble. So if you're a good person, or, you think you are, and you're getting on in your life, how can anyone possibly lie to you or mislead or anything like that? Because I wouldn't do it. So, but the people have got to realise there is this sort of predator class out there who are quite happy to say whatever they want for whatever they need to do.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate business of it. And to explain this for people, because it's something that was said to me a while ago, that doing the right thing is really easy, but it is often very simple. And if you want to understand what the mentality is of these people that you're dealing with, have you ever had a cold and you grabbed a Kleenex tissue and you blow your nose, and then you screw up that piece of paper and you throw it in the bin? Then as you're walking down the street later, you think to yourself and you start feeling guilty and ashamed of yourself. Oh my God, what did I just do to that Kleenex? I completely just filled it full of boogers and screwed it up and tossed it in the trash. No, you never thought that, did you? Because as far as you're concerned, the Kleenex doesn't have feelings, it doesn't have value. The only value it has is of the temporary use to you. That's how they think about you, ladies and gentlemen. As far as they're concerned, you're just a toilet tissue that they throw away. They have that much emotional resonance for you, right? If I were to say to you the words boat, cucumber, rape, one of those words sounds different. One of those words feels different, doesn't it? And you can measure it on a brain scan. Person with a conscience will immediately have a huge spike when that word is mentioned because it's different from the others. And a psychopath scan, on the other hand, they think just as much and feel the same way about rape and murder and theft and things of that nature as you do about a boat or a cucumber, right? Just absolutely, completely different individuals that we're looking for. And I think you mentioned about the Bill of Rights there, and I think it was when Billy TK and I were arrested trying to, give fly to a lot of people's rights to move and travel and live free and stuff like that, and we were punished severely for doing so. And I found out that under the Bill of Rights, I think it's Clause 14, it says, and this is the last clause in the Bill of Rights, by the way, yes, we've guaranteed you all these rights, but they also use words to the effect that unless we say you don't have those rights, unless we've got a reason why you don't have those rights. These are not enshrined, these are not in stone, you don't actually have them unless we say you do. So when people, I remember this meme one time, and there's two police officers just... And it reads down the bottom there. He said, "But I've got rights." No, you don't. There's no such thing as a right. Okay, there's only what they can take from you and what you're willing to defend. There's only two types of people in this world, it is said: those who want to be left alone, and those who won't leave them alone. We had this other element back in the day, because like, for example, we've got a right against forced medication, and wasn't it Mary who went into the Supreme Court of New Zealand, or maybe it was the Privy Council or whatever at the time, saying that fluoride, because it's stated as having a medical aim, reducing dental decay, etc., that putting it in the water amounts to forced medication. And they won their court case and proved that, yes, fluoride is, under the Medicines Act, forced medication. So what did they do? They edited the Medicines Act to ensure that fluoride was not included in it. I love it. I just love it. The evil of these people is brilliant. It's just brilliant. And you have there was what happens is I think it was this old 1950s ABC thing. It talked about the formation of the Illuminati, and one part of it, well, a couple of parts of it really stick out to me that I've memorized, but one part that really is apropos to this is that when your scam gets exposed, take it underground so that, it's not scamming anybody anymore and people think that the problem is solved. And then you bring it back, and you bring it back under a different name or a different title or a different thing or whatever, and the scam just continues. It's quite excellent the way that they do this. And just recently I was sent an article by a lady named Katie, and it was about the New Zealand. There was this, I believe, Natural Medicines Regulation Act, where they were going to make it very, very difficult for people to practice natural medicines or for us to heal ourselves with natural products and things of this nature. And a big article headline, "Oh, that's being repealed." And I got away halfway through the article and then gave up reading, because my brain just kind of clicks on and goes, you know what they do? They're just going to repeal it and then edit it and then reintroduce it at 4 o'clock in the morning when there's there's nobody there left to debate it, and just force it on people anyway. And then Katie tells me, oh, you probably just didn't finish reading the article, but what they're going to do is they're going to edit it and then reintroduce it at like 4 o'clock in the morning and put it on people anyway. And it reminded me of this time. I think my wife Sarah, she said to me, I think it was like 2012 or something, hey Vinny, they defused a car bomb in Times Square in New York. And without even investigating even a skerrick, I just said just off the top of my head, oh, don't worry baby, it was probably the FBI just setting somebody up. And it was! Same playbook every time. It's almost like being Dr. Manhattan, who can see the future and just craving a surprise now and then. A good surprise, bad surprise, doesn't matter, just as long as you were surprised for once. And it just hasn't happened in the last 16 years or so that I've been doing this show.
I think to just to add on to that, though, Vinny, I think that part of the antidote to that is that we need people in these positions, and we need these organisations continuing to push back, because the thing is, they will only go as far as we allow them to go. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing with the fluoridation issue, as just one example. If Fluoride Free New Zealand wasn't here and we didn't have organisations, yourself and others sort of speaking up about it, they would have fluoridated the entire country by now. Like, it would have just been open and shut case. But we've managed to get a huge number of wins over the years, and yes, it's taken a huge amount of time and energy and effort, but we have been able to stop their progress. So, I guess just to give people a bit of sort of hope, we just need to continue to push back and in multiple different areas. And yes, they will come back, but in the end, they took lead out of the petrol and paint, too late, obviously, but they still did it, and that's sort of what we're hanging on to, that, fluoride is the new lead. So we're trying to, make that happen.
And it's a good idea, like, never give up. Right? Yeah. And there's this quote from Margaret Mead, rather. She said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And the quintessential element here is the belief in defeatism. People have lots of different beliefs: communism, fascism, vegetarianism, or whatever. But defeatism is the belief that you cannot win, that you've already lost, and there's absolutely no point. And defeating defeatism itself seems to be the key issue here, to my mind, because when you have people who are relentless in their scumbaggery, for lack of a better word, you don't know exactly where the line is drawn. Like, for example, they keep pushing us back, and they keep pushing us back, but eventually somebody's going to get pissed off enough to do something about it in a way that they're really not prepared for. Okay? I think that mental illness occurs under tyranny more than any other system of government, because people will sit there and they will be very, very stressed out, and they will think. That's the problem with people. That's the problem they want to get rid of. People can still think. In 2 generations' time, that might not be the case anymore, right? Because with all the things that are going on, like stratospheric aerosol injection, we've got, 30,000 times the normal amount of aluminium, like in pristine mountain snow. Sort of thing in Mount Shasta in the United States that's been recorded. And we found out that when fluoride interacts with aluminium, it makes its effects even more powerful. And then if you add Wi-Fi electromagnetic radiation onto that, there's a magnifying factor as well. And when you add herbicides and pesticides onto that, there's another magnifying factor. So because everybody's being sprayed, irradiated, all of their food and their drinking water's contaminated with this stuff and all these chemicals, what you're having is like almost like a convergence point where we might be looking at perhaps our generation, your generation, being maybe some of the last people who used to use pencils and paper and pens and have to do math problems without a calculator and have to actually read books and things of that nature. And now with the screens and the outbreak of ADHD, people's inability to concentrate for more than a minute at a time or something. I mean, if you want to explain to somebody how fluoride is dangerous and you've got 60 seconds to show them the evidence, it's not possible, right? And so this brings back home your point that we need to be in these positions of power because people are incapable of defending themselves. We have to be the guardians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, you talked about, what needs to be done and how it needs to happen. And recently we've had two major things happen just before the election in the United States. RFK Jr. tweeted about fluoridation. I don't know if you're aware of this, Vinny, but he tweeted this out. And I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was like saying, fluoride, we're going to stop fluoridation as the first day I get into the new office on the 20th of January, right? Now, within that tweet, he included the lawyer Michael Connett, who's Paul Connett's son, and Paul's an expert on fluoridation. Michael is the next level, right? He's sort of the next iteration where he knows the whole history of it, all of the research, and he's a lawyer. Now the Fluoride Action Network took the US EPA to court, and that court case lasted 7 years, right? For a number of reasons. It was to get the National Toxicology Program neurotoxicity report to a point, a finalised point where they could actually use it. The Judge Chen was actually waiting for that NTP report, which I talked about before, so that he could base his decision on that, top level information. So what happened in that court case was that the judge agreed with the Fluoride Action Network that it is an unreasonable risk to add fluoride chemicals to the shared public water supply. So this is a federal court in the United States, and what he's done is he said, I'm not going to direct the EPA as to how they go about this, but they must mitigate the risk, right? They must stop it. So this is where it is in the US. Now, that's a huge one. Now, the EPA could appeal this, and they've got up until the 20th of January, ironically the same day as the inauguration, etc., on the 20th of January. So it's a really important date, but that is a massive win. And what we've done, what Michael's done is he's shown both sides, he's shown the evidence to say that it's an unreasonable risk, and there's multiple different studies and ways he's done that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about 2 weeks ago, the Florida Surgeon General has come out with an advisory stating that it is public health malpractice to continue water fluoridation. Now, this is a state with 22 million people, and they have got hundreds of water boards, as you can imagine. So he sent out this advisory to all of these water boards to say that you need to consider this now, the evidence from the National Toxicology Program, and he's sort of talking about the neurotoxic and neuropsychiatric effects of fluoridation. So there is massive pushback going on, and I just wanted to bring that up as well. Also, on the back of the NTP's work, Dr. Linda Birnbaum, who was a former NTP director, she has come out in the last week and said that the NTP who found that at 1.5 parts million and above, there was a lowering of IQ, right? There's this causal sort of associated link. She's saying now that the NTP is working on below 1.5, so around the 0.7. And what she's saying is there very well could be no safe level of fluoride in the water. So there is some massive news coming out, and it's just a matter of us, spreading that word and keeping going, like you're saying,
It's what did they say? On the road to enlightenment, there are but two mistakes: not beginning and not finishing. Right, now, this is something I found about warfare, which is particularly interesting, that was beyond the conflicts, the battles, and the weapons and things of that nature. One important word to win a war: morale. People have to have the will to fight. And you can do that with a number of different methodologies. You can scare them by saying this enemy's such a big threat that they're going to kill your babies and so on and so forth, do horrible things. You can do it with bravado and hope. We are the superior. We can beat this terrible threat. But regardless of which methodology you use, the reality of warfare, any kind of warfare, if you are warring against the Council on the Fluoride issue, or warring against Russia in Ukraine, or warring against the Palestinians, or whatever, morale will be tested. And if people lose hope that victory is near, then you succumb to the defeatist mentality. We cannot win, there's no point in fighting, and the enemy wins by default. And I think that's probably one of the main things that we need to fight against. Again, as I mentioned earlier, is that concept of defeatism. How do we give hope to people? So when RFK Jr. Comes out and says things like that, I'll get rid of fluoride, that gives people hope. But there's a difficulty and a problem with that too, because you think that the fight is being handled. You think that it doesn't need your help, that it doesn't need your involvement. Oh, these guys have got this sweet as, right? Just like after Obama was elected, a lot of rights activists, anti-war activists, and things of that nature, after all this endless, no end in sight wars that he was going to end, all this illegal wiretapping of the United States citizens that he was going to end, and then he drops more bombs in his first year as president than George Bush did during all 8 of his years as president, right? But during that period of time, while Obama was president, all those people who believed what he said initially believed the problem was being handled. And the only thing that they can remember, and I hear this phrase a lot from people, regardless of what politician has done what horrible crimes to people's nations, I thought that I believed that they were doing a really good job. They were doing the best they could. Yeah, more bombs in a year than another president's entire presidency, right? He's just doing the best he can, man. Stop giving him grief. I mean, so what if a quarter of Iraqi children are now born deformed from depleted uranium munitions that have been used during the First and Second Gulf Wars? All right, Iraqi parents don't even ask the doctor, is it a male or a female anymore? They ask, is it normal? Right? And that's what's problematic about people. As soon as they get so much hope without reason backing it. This was a great video that I watched one time called the pitfalls of uncritical positive thinking. So it's a balance. I don't know exactly. You know how sometimes somebody will tell you something and it's a criticism of yourself, but you're not really ready to accept it yet, and so you need to process it and take a little bit of time. That's the time where I'm at right now. Is how exactly do you give people enough hope to want to continue the fight, but not so much hope that they just sit back and relax and stop fighting? Yeah, it's a conundrum. I'm thinking about it. Maybe one day I'll come up with a conclusion, but
Yeah, I think Vinny, like I've been saying for probably a year now that this NTP report that was being finalised is we're in the beginning of we're in the ending phase now, right? But I always say to people, but it is going to come down to how many people support us or support stopping fluoridation, which will make the difference. Fluoridation is definitely going to end. The difference is it could be a couple of months or it could be a couple of years. And in the meantime, people are going to continue to be poisoned and we're going to have a neurotoxin in the water supply. So you're right. My view on the whole politics thing is that we have to keep, you go out there and you look at what politicians are saying, but when they get into power, you have to hold them to account. You have to actually be the watchdog, we can't take the foot off the throat and we can't just expect them just to do what they said they were going to do, because we know oftentimes they just don't. So we have to keep pushing them to make sure that they do what we want,
And the question is, how do you put pressure on? So political pressure is about popularity. It's about reputation. And I found out an interesting factoid the other day that how men and women compete with each other is very, very different. Men will outrightly compete with each other in a boxing ring, or one will be an architect and the other will build a better building or something of that nature. Women, on the other hand, compete in the terms of destroying each other's reputation. Right? They'll spread gossip or lies, and they'll make that person's reputation basically as mud. And this is an interesting tactic. I was just been thinking, we've got a lot of women in this movement, and I think fewer men. I think there's more women in the movement now than men. I think men's testosterone has been targeted very specifically. The will to fight biochemically has been targeted by many of these various measures. And so imagine if the ladies came up with their natural competitive edge to destroy the reputations and gossip about all of these people, to make it a topic of discussion. What if every cafe in the morning, you couldn't go past it without the girls talking about some politician who's a corrupt scumbag who did this and did that, and before you know it, the population loses faith in that particular politician because of all the stuff that's being spread around by the ladies about it. I mean, that could destroy them more effectively, I think, in some ways than the male version of just straight competing against them sort of thing. But I think it has to be in concert. There's the reason why everything exists in polarity, white, black, light, dark, male, female, is because everything's supposed to be really working in a balance and harmony. And I think the reason why society in so many sectors is really falling apart is that the harmony between the masculine and feminine ways of dealing with threats and challenges aren't being combined to face them.
Yeah, it's like just going back to how are we gonna stop this and how we're gonna win? There's a lot of organization and maturing that needs to happen. Like we need to get organized and become more mature in how we go about trying to defeat these guys. And just to go back to the point around just trying to get into those places where we can take the control and the power ourselves, and we're actually able to make those decisions. But previously we'd probably be out protesting and making noise that way, but then being able to be inside is far more productive. However, that is not without a lot of effort as well, because if you're on a council or a board or whatever, and no one else agrees with you, that can really play with your morale. Going back to what you're talking about, and it's important to understand that this is a long game. It's not a short game. So people need to understand that it's going to take time. These people have been at it for forever. So for us to think that, we're just going to bowl on in there and just reverse all this, is probably a bit misguided, really. But just to go back to your point around, the great Penny Bright used to say, activists get things done, and it's true. You think of things that have changed in history, and in particularly New Zealand. It was just a handful of people who started certain movements that actually turned into bigger movements, and they stopped things, So I think, we shouldn't feel that one or two people just working by themselves, can't change things. You just look at the inspiration of Mary Byrne. She's been at it for 26 years now, and that's a hell of a long time, to be going on one issue. And she does work on other things as well. But, she could have quite easily just said, this is just all too hard, 5 years into it or whatever. But she's just carried on, and that's the sort of resilience we need,
Yeah, that's the difference, I believe, between somebody. I don't know. I've been doing this talk radio and YouTubing and alternative media thing for longer than anybody else in New Zealand's history, like by a huge margin. And I've created more content than I think justifiably for the foreseeable future any alternative media outlet in New Zealand ever will. And I have seen people come and then go because they didn't do what I did. What did you do differently to all those people, Vinny? Mentorship. Find the people who've been doing it a long time. Why? Because the advice that they'll give you about their own longevity in this will give you the skills to be able to ensure your own longevity. And it's exactly like you said, this is not a short game, this is a long game. So the people who stay, like me, I talked to Ground Zero Radio Network producer about this, and he says, yeah, man, a lot of these people are just going to disappear because you got to learn how to tighten your belt, how to live within your means, how to dedicate exactly what it is you need to survive whilst you're doing this work. And not just financially, psychologically, emotionally. Okay, what happens to people who go to war and then come back? They don't just go back to their normal lives because they've seen things they can't unsee, things that have affected them very deeply, and it requires a shockingly large amount of adjustment and understanding in order to go back to your normal life. And a lot of people who encounter this kind of information are so repulsed by the very nature of the threat that they're dealing with that they just let it go all together because it's too stressful, it's too hard. And it's like, no, it's not too stressful, it's not too hard. You're too much of a coward. You're too much of a lazy person. You're too apathetic. You're too ignorant. That is why you can't fight a long game. It's one of those four factors, or all of them combined, every single time. That is the difference between somebody who wins a long game and somebody who never even has the gumption to start the fight in the first place or gives up in the middle of it. And people need to understand that strength does exist within you, whether or not you realize it, and finding and talking and associating with people who have strength, who have intelligence, who've already proven their longevity, basically increases the chances that you're going to become one of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, I've been at this for, I don't know, 12 years now, and without the support from Mary Byrne and Mark Atkin as well, and other people over the years, Pat McNair, and these people who've been at it for a long time, you wouldn't survive. And that's what you're talking about. There's a sort of mentorship part of it. How you actually go about trying to change society in a positive way, and keeping sane over the whole thing. Like, I'll give you one example. Recently, I think it was last week, there was this new, may not be that new, but it's on TVNZ Plus, this talking about the Dunedin longitudinal data set and the studies around it. And you've got Jonathan Broadbent, who did a study on fluoridation from 2015, you may recall it, Vinny. And basically he got on this program and said, oh, well, we looked at fluoride and we cut it every way we could, and we couldn't find any effect for fluoride on IQ. And I'm like, okay, so this guy, he's not lying, right? But he is misleading, because what he should have said was, well, we couldn't find anything in this one study, and the NTP, the National Toxicology Program, which I just talked about before, has actually rated this a low-quality study. And by the way, there's another 52 out of 55 IQ studies that actually prove the study that I did wrong. So there probably is a link, but not with my shitty study. If he was being honest, that's what he would have said, But and this is what you have to sort of, the psychology of it, you have to deal with. You go, this guy, he's not lying specifically, but he's misleading, and you have to sort of sit there and watch this guy, and all of these people are watching this program because it's the people are interested in science, sort of so to speak, and they're watching this going, oh, what a documentary! This is so wonderful, and they're just swallowing up all of this propaganda bullshit. And they're just, just going to regurgitate it and say, oh, the Broadbent study's great. But anyone who's actually looked into it is sitting there just going, you're just misleading people.
What was his name? John Ansell has a great tactic. He always comes up with wonderful terms for things, So if it's instead of the Broadbent study, it could just be known colloquially as the Bent study. Because that's or the bent broadly study, regardless of how we go about it. You have to ridicule these people, and it's not necessarily because these people are stupid. It's because these people are evil and take themselves very seriously, right? It's called reverence, right? To hold something sacred. And Mark Twain said irreverence is the champion of liberty because it's its only defender. That's the thing. I don't hold sacred what other people do, and that is the reason why I stand for freedom, because I understand that people hold things sacred, and because of that belief, they prevent themselves from doing what is right in any given moment.
I mean, look, this Dr. Jonathan Broadbent, he would know the science, right? So he knows the NTP review, he knows all of this evidence, but he can't bring himself to admit that he was wrong, which is what you're saying, He's saying, he can't just say that I might be wrong here, and it's a real problem because it's a sacred cow we're dealing with. And, like I was saying before, it's the commentariat and these guys who think they know what they're talking about, they just can't let it go, So, yeah. But what will break them down is, they walk into a room and everyone just starts laughing at them. because everyone knows that they're full of it, you know. So that's going to be the tipping point, is this sort of understanding of the evidence and what it means, and it is breaking down. So Dr. Latipo, the Surgeon General for Florida, speaking in his press conference about his advisory that fluoridation should be stopped, and it's a public health malpractice to continue fluoridation. These things are coming out. You can't keep lying forever. And I think the most bizarre thing for me is that it's almost as if the Director General of Health and the Ministry of Health don't realise that there's the internet, because they publish this research, the summary of the science, but we can look up the research, and we know, for example, one of the studies, I won't go into all of it, but Kumar, right, they say it's a relatively strong systematic review, right? We know that is based on fraudulent science. We know that. So when they say this sort of stuff and they're pulling this sort of information, and we are aware of the evidence and we know what it says, they're just a laughing stock, So it's just a matter of time, Vinny, but...
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do. It's just stay the course, they say. Stay the effing course, right? Keep going, man, keep going. And this is something for the audience as well, right? If you're not on the field, support those who are, right? You have no idea. Like, there was this one day I got up in 2012, and it was bill day, right? I had my power bill to pay, my water bill to pay, my rent to pay, and I calculated it up, and it was like $500. And I thought to myself, I don't have $500. And then I went into my PayPal, and there was 500 euros in there from a man named Gert in Germany. Like, unbelievable. And people don't know that if you're surviving and doing your job, working for humanity is really working for you to enable you to continue that work. It becomes a symbiotic relationship. The audience influences the commentator then influences the audience, and back and forth and back and forth. And I think that a lot of people in the audience really underestimate how powerful they are and the effect that they have. And they do this because they're not on the camera, they're not doing this. It's like, do you think that your contributions are any less valuable, or they're not valuable at all? Hell no. Without you guys, there would be no support out there for the people like myself, like Kane, and like many others in this world who won't be slaves. You are the change agents, and you are behind us, and that is the only reason we are still around, ladies and gentlemen, is because of you, your support. Goodness knows how many guests I've had on this show that I had no idea who they were until a listener enlightened me. Goodness knows how many times I've gotten up in the morning and didn't have the money for the things that I needed to survive, and it just turns up because of you guys, all right? All the ways that you contribute, all the little times that every time you share, every time you subscribe, every time you message somebody and tell them about a show, every time you remember something that was said on a show that you pass on to others in conversation, all contributes to the fight, okay? In wars, there are people that are on the front line, in the path of gunfire and cannons, and there are people on the back line who are manning the kitchens, setting up the showers, defending the base camp. Without those people on the front line wouldn't survive going out even once. They'd go out, they'd fight, and then they'd disappear into nothingness. You guys, the backline support, are the reason why the war effort continues against tyranny, and it is also the reason that we are going to win. And so I am going to just tell you all how grateful I am. And if you never realized how important you are, how valuable you are, how special you are, I just need to remind you all of that fact. Kane, it's been an honor and a pleasure having you on here today, and I've always liked you, mate. In fact, Kane's actually my favourite name, other than Vincent, of course.
Well, just a comment, like the other thing about getting involved and whether you're in the front or the back or whatever, like being involved and helping with this issue, right, it changes you, If I think back, 12 years ago now to where I started with this issue and myself and all the rest of it, working on something and being able to learn all of the skills that you do, you speak in front of council, you run for office or whatever, you make an ad or you get involved, you do interviews, all this sort of stuff. I never would have thought I would have done that 12 years ago or a decade ago. But you go through such a great learning curve that you actually build the confidence to be able to just go, oh yeah, I can do that. And sometimes you think, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And then you think, oh, I actually did do that, Like even just really simple things like calling into to talkback, something simple like that. I wouldn't have the courage to do that years and years ago, but now you just got to do it, So I think, there's a huge opportunity for growth, for personal growth. And like you say, if you can't get out in front, you've got to support the people and the groups that are doing the work, It's just critical, we need support, So fluoridefree.org.nz if you want to sign up for the newsletter to keep in contact. We've got t-shirts, we've got books, we've got and most importantly, we've got information that we really want you to share. The most important thing is for you to share, share the information. So, we can hold the likes of Jonathan Broadbent or Bent Broadly to account. That's what we need. That's what we want.
We've got two people, one Broadbent, one Broadly, right? You can't make this up. Like I remember the other day, I was like, I don't look at Instagram very often, but that day I did, and Jaguar is a very famous British car company, and there's a saying going around the world that's been talked about for a long time: "Go woke, go broke." And their new marketing executive was a homosexual man who is married to another homosexual man. And guess what breed of dog they had that they really loved a lot? A cockpoo. Two gay men who love their cockpoo. You can't make this shit up, ladies and gentlemen, okay? I didn't make the rules. I'm just telling you.
So look at Instagram, Vinny.
We have a very high class establishment on this show here, ladies and gentlemen. We need to deliver the goods. And it was just a couple of other notes as well, is that once you find out a tactic that doesn't work, for example, protesting. All right, why didn't the Wellington protest work? Why did myself and Billy TK get arrested? Why did our protest go nowhere? Because basically, for lack of a better explanation, protesting is giving permission. All right, did you know that? It's a maritime thing. If you are a captain of a ship and your second in command comes up to you to officially protest you firing on a ship full of innocent civilians, does that stop that ship getting blown up? No, it doesn't. The captain acknowledges your official protest in the log and then orders you to fire, and you fire. Protesting is a form of permission giving. All right? Non-compliance, on the other hand, is a completely different ball of wax altogether. This is what people don't understand is the most powerful word, what occultists call the forgotten word. No. You want to do it? No. I'm not going to put up with that. I'm not going to let it happen. Okay, that's what's his name? George Orwell said as the point of 1984. Is there a lesson to be derived from this work? And he says, yes. Don't let it happen. It's up to you. And Kane has proven that you can, as a person with a conscience, get elected into local boards and things of that nature. I've got a mate, Clyde Graff from the Graff Boys, did amazing documentaries on 1080 poison, which gets dropped in our waterways, incidentally a fluoride compound. And he notices how difficult it is just to be in those positions because he feels relatively alone in those. Like he doesn't have a whole lot of support, but he still keeps doing it anyway because he is having some successes here or there. If there was simply more of us doing it, we would see change faster and faster and faster and faster before it becomes a runaway freight train of change and freedom in this country and every other. And this is what the Milgram experiment found. The first part of the experiment, I say this on the show a lot, is very, very well known and highly publicized. If you put somebody in a white lab coat from Harvard University, big authority figure, and tell somebody to kill another person, in this case they were electrocuting them to death, 90% of people would obey that authority figure just because they are an authority figure. The second part of the experiment, however, which is nowhere near as well known, is that they showed the 10% of people who were resistant and just said, no, I'm not going to electrocute that guy to death, to the next people coming into the second phase of the experiment. And the reverse happened. When people see a man or a woman standing up to authority successfully, they are granted the courage to stand up to tyranny too. That is why it is so important that each and every one of us have the courage, just the courage, to say or do something because of the other people who might be encouraged. That means to give courage by your actions. A waterfall may start with one drop of water, but look what it becomes, ladies and gentlemen. Never underestimate the power of one, because there is not just one. Everybody is watching and being affected by things that happen all the time. So it doesn't become a cause or a vocation. It becomes an obligation, a responsibility to do what you know is right because it is the right thing to do and needs no further justification. Kane, thank you, bro.
Thank you, mate. Cheers, Vinny.
All right. Right now, well, ladies and gentlemen, with the inspiration and what have you, I need to do a little bit of the mechanics of the show, which comes down to donations. The show's been giving platforms to people like Kane and Mary Boone from the Fluoride Action Network, as well as thousands of others from hundreds and hundreds of other different causes across the world for well over a decade and a half now. And the only reason why we've been able to do that is because of the support of the generous listeners like you. If you value this content, this is called the peer-to-peer economy. You take all the risk in a capitalist economy, and then you sell your product to people, and then you use the profits to make more products. In a peer-to-peer economic model, you take all the risk and you give the product away for free. And if people find it valuable, if they want more of it, they support you financially, and that allows your business to continue. And the truth is, a business, ladies and gentlemen, we're in the business of saving mankind from the ruthless scumbaggery that besets it. So if you have that in your heart, if you know that this show has inspired you, that it has encouraged you, that it has helped people who've been on it, and you want that to continue going forward, go to thevinnyeastwoodshow.com. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question, and Eastwood, like, go ahead. Make my news. And go ahead, ladies and gentlemen, make a donation, start up a regular automatic payment through the PayPal, Kiwi Bank, and Patreon, and we're going to give you some rewards associated with that. If you are a donor, on the homepage there, it says click here for your special rewards, and those special rewards include giving you access to my phone number. I want to actually talk with you, all right? If you're going through a hard time or whatever and you got nobody else to talk to, your family don't listen to you, your co-workers call you a conspiracy theorist, you feel bullied, you feel alone, you feel depressed or something like that, rather than continue being depressed, do something about it. Contact somebody who you think might actually listen, might actually know something about it. As we talked about earlier, mentorship. You're not alone in this. You're not. Get rid of that idea. There are people everywhere in this world who are remarkably encouraging to talk to and to listen to, that you can contact if you're in your lowest state, and they will build you back up again. I'm one of those people. Okay, there might be a few of us, but we're very, very powerful, and we're good at what we do. That's why we're still here. All right, that's why a lot of other people are still here. The amount of people who've come up to me and said that, Vinny, I was about to commit suicide, and then I heard your show, and I realized that the jokes were worse than my life, and so I decided to keep on living. All right, so this... There's a reason to go on living, ladies and gentlemen, and that is Vinny's jokes are worse than anything else that could possibly happen to you, okay? Just have that little bit of encouragement for there. And I also would be remiss if I didn't plug my wonderful sponsors, Reopen.nz, who started supporting us during the lockdowns. Excusez-moi. I'm not very well at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not very well. Reopen.nz is a directory of anti-mandate, pro-choice, all-inclusive businesses in New Zealand. And so if you want to add your little freedom business there, ladies and gentlemen, please go into it and join the hundreds of other businesses from all sorts of different fields who've added their freedom business on that list. It's absolutely amazing. When they first started sponsoring my show, there weren't too many people on that list, and now there is a gargantuan list of freedom businesses all over the country that you can go to for practically any service you can imagine. I was like, man, I helped make that happen with the sponsorship for this show. Thank you so much, Henry, for supporting the show, as well as HoldenHealthCare.com, emphasis on the care, because the body has the ability to heal itself, provided you give it the right tools to do so. And the medical establishment will often just give you the wrong tools, and so your illnesses will be prolonged, not cured. They will be exacerbated rather than treated, and some people just go through this medical system and running on a treadmill, and they bankrupt themselves, loved ones die, and so on and so forth, and it's just a vicious cycle. And the reason why is because there's a design to that system that is counterpoint to the design of the human body. David Holden recognizes this as a naturopathic oncologist, specialist in nutritional biochemistry. So he's capable of, like, for example, when I had a liver issue a couple of years ago, he has this scanning device, like $500 million they spent in development of this scanning device. They put the little nodes on you, and it shoots light through your bloodstream, and then captures what color light reflects off of it to see how healthy you are. Amazing stuff. And he says, okay, Vinny, here's your liver scan. Now, it's classified from red, orange, and green. All right, 1, 2, 3. 3 being red, which is very bad. 2 meaning not that great. And 1 meaning very healthy. You're not a 3, Vinny. You're a 9. I'm like, whoa, shit, so I had to do something about that. And because of David Holden's specialist care and the advice and wisdom that he granted me, which was mainly down to a choice. Vinny, do you want to change or do you want to die? And I changed. All right, and that's why I'm still alive. You see? That's what your body is trying to tell you when it gives you dis-ease, that you're doing something that is not good for you, or multiple things that are not good for you, and you need to knock them on the head and replace them with things that are better. Like the seasonal cold that I seem to get every year in December. Every year! I know, it's freaking unbelievable. The pollen in the air or something like that. I just get sick as a dog right before Christmas and New Year's when you're supposed to be having a fun and party time and what have you. It's tremendously unfortunate. Well, another thing that I find tremendously unfortunate is riveroflies.co.nz. riveroflies.co.nz for the American audience. You guys have got to go there and watch Billy TK's documentary, River of Lies, the New Zealand Scamdemic, an investigative documentary. Spent a long time showing the evidence, okay? What these people said before and after, so that you could tell that they weren't telling you the whole truth. A very impactful and significant documentary, and the reason why I say unfortunate is because nowhere near the amount of people have seen it that should. So, riveroflies.co.nz, ladies and gentlemen, please go there. Thank you all for your support. Thank you, Kane, for being such a wonderful guest and a wonderful man, and the methodologies with which you follow, sir. And we will see you again sometime, ladies and gentlemen, at the Vinny Eastwood Show.com.
Gentlemen, I brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem. It may be necessary to penetrate the Vinny Eastwood Show. The Vinny Eastwood Show. Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, I've been working on a new Vinny scene. I think that might be the kind of penetration we need.
The Vinny Eastwood Show. Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live on Ground Zero Radio.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and hermaphrodites, my fellow slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood Show is bad news. It's like the news, but so much worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes.
You see, this beastly, ghastly show has been exposing our scumbaggery, which we call necessary.
Yeah, and as the World Economic Führer, I believe we should give him a little gift with a little card that says Merry Christmas from Santa Claus.
Oh yeah, we could send something through his windows. Yeah, I've been speaking with Jacinda Ardern that we need to eliminate the threat of Vinny Eastwood.
Why do you say Vinny Eastwood when it's clearly Vinny Eastwood?
Absolutely, he's a major impediment to our planet. How are we going to get rid of him?
We could poison his water supply.
We've done that already.
Okay, I'm running out of ideas here. I'm sorry, I've got a lot going on. Klaus Schwab Jr. telling people that I'm some evil overlord.
Oh, that's just not true. You see, we're lifetime actors.
Yes, we play the role, don't we?
But I am still glad, even if I am not really the overlord. And I have penetrated all the cabinets of the world. You know, penetration is big for me.
Oh, it's big for me too. I wouldn't be me if it weren't for the copious quantities of penetration.
Yeah, so thank God my mother's out of the way. Otherwise I never would have been king. Just keep to go on and on. You know, the stress of dealing with this Vinny Eastwood problem is probably what killed her. I mean, she was a very young 96, you see.